Hey everyone, this is Carl. I'm here with Paul Vincent of Tablecat Games tonight. Well known as the maker of the cool Savage World setting Street Wolves. One of I really enjoy it. I love the 80s vibe, and he'll probably talk a little bit about that. So we'll get into what he's up to, what's been going on in his life, and the kinds of projects he's working on. And we'll also have a main topic, as always, when we have guests on. And we're going to talk about using the different subsystems. When's it right to use a different subsystem in Savage Worlds? When do you use dramatic tasks versus just trait rolls? When do you use a quick encounter versus just full-on combat? And I think Paul's going to bring his interesting experience with Street Wolves to the table and how that's all worked out. So stay tuned for that.
Whoa, one of the best games of the day.
Hey everyone, it's Carl again with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff. And again, I'm here with Paul. Paul, tell us all about what's going on with you, what you're up to. Just let everybody know who you are.
Hi, I'm Paul Vincent Rudolph. I run Tablecat Games. I made Street Wolves, so it's a setting that takes place in 1987. It's got kind of a retro vibe. It's heavily inspired by Miami Vice and 80s stuff. I tend to go more grittier or serious, but other people can run it like kind of goofy, over the top neon stuff. It's really a toolbox for however you want to do it. Since the last time I talked to you, we've had a ton of stuff come out, so I'll try to be brief.
You don't have to be brief. We're all here to listen. So
I just don't want to bore anybody. So, well, I did do a non-Savage Worlds game. So I did Monster Trucker. So my hat. It's semi-truck driving monsters, which is it's based on Tricube Tales, but that's done by Zadmar Games. So Zadmar did a bunch of Savage World stuff too. So, I mean, there's a little bit of a tie in there. But as far as goes, we finished the Dead Hand campaign, part of the Kickstarter. So there was Vince Kaufman wrote that, and then I did all the layout, and I added some Soviet gear to it. There's a little bit of about the Soviet era factions in it too. Basically, the Street Wolves are on the trail of a missing Soviet diplomat, and then it just kind of spirals into potentially world-ending consequences for Dead Hand. Then I also put together some adventures called Turbo Dreams, which was some of the Kickstarter adventures and then two newer ones. And I'm really, my shirt is from that. It's Purple Rain, heavily inspired by Purple Rain. I'm not ripping it off. It's an homage.
It's an homage, yeah.
Yeah. And then the big thing I got coming up is the Heart of Glass campaign. That's a sandbox mystery. In it, the Street Wolves get a cryptic clue that there's something terrible happened in the past in the small town, and things grow bigger as the wolves uncover what happened in the past and what's happening in the present. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. Otherwise, it's basically inspired by Coen Brothers movies like Blood Simple, Twin Peaks, Silence of the Lambs. It's got this very small town Midwestern thing going on. Even though it's Street Wolves, takes place in a lot of cities. I really wanted to do something that was a fish out of water kind of situation. And me being from a small town in Wisconsin, that's essentially what I did. Was I recreated my small town in a fictional way and then set this mystery in there. And one of the things about it too is that the Street Wolves have failed their previous mission pretty badly, so they're cut off from their usual support. So they're fish out of water, essentially. They got no backup. It's just them. And I have some tables in it for figuring out what that failure. I mean, you could run a failed mission and then jump into Heart of Glass, but I also have some like backstory tables that you could roll, like how badly they screwed up, type of thing.
So now this is the project you have right now. That's right.
That's launching Tuesday, November 4th.
Tuesday, November 4th. Hopefully, I'll be able to get this one pulled together, and we'll get this out. Hopefully, everybody's watching this during the within the first week of the Kickstarter, so that everybody can jump on and go get it. So
yeah, it's on Backerkit, and you can find it if you go to tablecatgames.com. I'll have a link on the homepage, and you can just pop on over to that if you want to check it out. But I should mention that there's a collaboration with Megan Caves of Gone Rogue Entertainment, and then she was also an actor on Wildcards. She's doing audio logs, so she'll be recording these logs where in the adventure the player or the characters find these cassette tapes with backstory and clues on them, and she'll be dramatically acting out the logs, which will be much better than me doing it, because you don't want me to try to act or anything like that. So that there is that collaboration too that I'm really excited about, because originally that's kind of how the idea went. Was I wanted to work with her on something, and she had some like audio adventure type stuff on drive-through, and that kind of got me thinking of like, well, how could I incorporate audio into a role-playing game?
Well, this isn't the first time that you've had audio as kind of at least part of the vibe that you're trying to get with your game. You did that before, haven't you?
Well, I had a soundtrack that came out of Street Wolves. So I worked with a very talented composer, Jay Stroutman, who composed man, my brain is malfunctioning, but I think it was 4 tracks that also had extended editions. So it was a lot of music in total. But yeah, we funded that soundtrack, and that's available on drive-through and wherever you can get music. You can stream it on, all the stuff. There's so many things out there right now, but I know it's out there.
All the major places.
A lot of places.
All the major places.
Like Bandcamp and stuff.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I remember that was part of the, sort of and it was like you could use that in part of the game, give you kind of that vibe, that background,
and I have that. I don't know if you remember, but a lot of people like this whenever they see it at conventions. I have like a little USB tape drive.
Yep.
So it looks like a cassette tape, but it's a USB drive, and I actually have the songs on there too. So you just take it on the go.
Yeah, nobody has cassette drives anymore, so it's good that it's a USB.
I have 2 cassette players right now in the house, and both are broken, and I have a third one at my dad's house that I'm praying works. So, but we'll find out.
Well, it's a dad's house, so it probably does work, because...
Yeah.
Cool. So anything else about the Backerkit that people should know? Obviously, we'll put links in. There's links at Tablecat. Your website. What was your website again?
Tablecatgames.com.
Tablecatgames.com. Okay. We'll put the links in and make sure. But anything people should know that beyond what we've already talked about, that's like, hey, this is really something. I love the fish out of water. I love that they don't have backup and that they're all on their own. I love that it's a small town. That's kind of cool. What else should they know about it? What's going to get them excited to go and put some money down?
Oh boy, now the pressure's on. I think the way that it works is it's very sandboxy, so very open-ended, where you can, it just kind of gives you the tools of like, here's all these people in this town, and here's what they're up to, and you get like backstory of what happened, and you can kind of just have these events happen as the players, like nothing is set in stone, right? Like, okay. Players may end up here, and it's all good because there's this timeline that's happening in the background where you can kind of ratchet things up. And every time I've had people, because I've run it multiple times, and every time I've had people play it, they've come away with these really great memories of like, oh, there was this, I don't know, spoilers, I guess, but there was this event in the woods where there was these traps, and there was a fire, and they were like being hunted by a killer, So people have had like these very distinct memories playing the game, and it's been very exciting for me, I think the first time I ran it was over a year ago, but I was just at a convention. One of my test players was there, and they were bringing it up and talking about how much fun they had. And I was like, it's always a joy for a GM to run a game that's successful. And it's, as a writer too, having somebody find that kind of joy in it is great. And just in addition to the adventure itself, there's a new faction that I'm adding to Street Wolves via this mini campaign, I guess, that was originally in the Street Wolves Turbo Edition, the actual Street Wolves core book, but it got cut out because I ran out of room, or there was just way too much stuff. So I found a way to include them in this adventure, and then so I'll have the background on this faction along with some of the major players of the faction stuff, so you can bring it in to future Street Wolves adventures, whatever ones you write.
So in Savage Worlds, there's a lot of plot point campaign type things that are out there. This doesn't sound like a traditional plot point. This sounds more like 50 Fathoms, where things are happening and you're going kind of where you want to, but the things are happening and are coming to a crescendo. It sounds more like that. Is that am I accurate?
It is kind of like that. Like you're in the town the whole time, and you're interacting. Like, it's not like there's breaks in between any chapters or anything. It's basically you just keep going until either the Street Wolves decide to leave town, like out of fear or whatever. But there is pretty much like a noose tightening where there's again, I know probably GMs would buy this, so I'm not too afraid to say spoilers, but there's basically kind of a conspiracy with people in charge of this town. So they're all the Street Wolves end up trying to lay low, but the more they investigate, the more they bring attention on themselves, and then therefore the more danger they end up, creating for themselves. So by the end, usually it's some sort of big violent confrontation, just because they've kept pushing and pushing and pushing. But that's not the only way to play this with like guns and stuff. You could try sneaking around. Like, there's plenty of ways that I suggest that you can overcome these tests. But if you're playing a role-playing game with guns, at some point players are just going to be like, screw this, I'm just going to use a gun, right?
Yeah, sometimes you have to solve a problem with extreme aggression, but that's just the way it is sometimes. So, but that's cool. That's very cool. So it should be, by the time this drops and people are watching it, should be on Backerkit, ready to go. Sounds really interesting, a different take on sort of how you pull things together. And I love the small town vibe. I'm from a small town too. So I'm from a tiny town. I don't even know if I'd call it small. It's like tiny, super tiny, but so that's kind of cool.
I'm from one that was population 800. And so then this, I had to ramp it up a little bit because it was like, okay, that's too small of a town.
Yeah.
Like, there's only one cop in my hometown. They'd easily defeat the one cop,
Right. So kind of a little bigger than a small town, a little medium town. So
half medium.
Medium.
Oh, I will say too that there's going to be some add-ons. So if you miss Street Wolves, it'll be on a discount in Backerkit if you want a hard copy Street Wolves, or there's like some bundle deals and stuff too. So if people missed out on Street Wolves originally, they can get in now and they actually save money.
Very cool. And Street Wolves is definitely worth the purchase, because it's especially if you like that 80 vibes, Miami Vice kind of feel. It's cool. I mean, it's just got a lot of flavor to it, which is really awesome. Which is the whole point of settings, that bring flavor into the game, versus just kind of the standard books that come off the shelf. So very cool. So what do you say? Do you want to talk about the main topic, get into how do you pick a system? How do you, and I know we were talking earlier and you said, hey, let me talk about it with respect to Street Wolves, because that's where you spent most of your time, and you spend so much time playing Street Wolves because that's your You've
That's
got to
my
play
yeah. I
test
gotta
it. You got
test
to
it
understand how
and
it
I
works. You know.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've played some Savage Battlelords. I got in a group and it's been very fun. But I'm not running it, so I'm not the one picking the subsystems or
Sure.
anything.
Sure.
So, and then I played a little bit of Deadlands here and there, but like 99% of my Savage Worlds experience is just Street Wolves. So
So let's pick on
unfortunately,
something.
but or fortunately,
So
what's
let's
that?
pick on something. The
All right.
classic dramatic task versus why don't I just roll a couple of trait rolls, call it done? When is appropriate for each? What do you think is
I think for me personally, it's when I want to put more pressure on the situation. So, like, we'll have, for instance, we'll just say, Heart of Glass. We're going to plug it a little more. Is
keep
in
going?
one
That's beautiful.
session, in one session, there was a player that wanted to sneak into this house and set a fire and then get away successfully. And you could do that in a few trait rolls or whatever, but it felt more dramatic to run it as a dramatic task. And, you know, uh, as they kept failing, because in that situation, they weren't doing well, and they just kind of turned it around right at the clutch moment. And that's the kind of thing you really want. Instead of four separate thievery rolls or whatever, you can have like this pressure mounting. I mean, maybe they'll win it with no problem, but other times it's more like skin of their teeth type of situation.
Yeah, I think dramatic tasks work really, really good when there's kind of a goal that there's some extreme consequences if they don't meet that goal, and it kind of builds towards it. You know, if you've got multiple players, multiple skills, multiple things that you're trying to do to get to that, versus it's like, well, I want to open the door. Okay, well, that's a trait roll, right? I want to,
Yeah.
I'm going to rummage through the cat. That's a script roll. But if it's like you said, I want to sneak in and do some additional things that have a lot of potential hazard to it. If you fail, definitely a dramatic task is really great, and it's a great time to use it when you want role playing, when you really want to get the players out of their shell because they narrate what each thing is. And I have an adventure called the Helix Nebula Situation, which the whole ending part is trying to get a big engine running again while you're being attacked by creatures and stuff like that. And so it's like multi-stages. You got to pull this lever, and then you got to do this.
Cool.
Well, how's this person going to use their skill in science to help the person who's trying to do this? And it really gets everybody involved. Very cool. So
And I've also found that it encourages people to maybe look at their skills that they might not use as often and say like, how can this? Because I'll try to encourage them. Don't just, you could pick the same skill multiple times, but that's not super fun. Like, what do you have in the toolbox, and how can we narrate this in a really interesting way where you're not doing the same thing over and over?
Now, when I do dramatic tech, I typically don't let people use the same skill unless it's really just it's the only skill that makes sense at all. I usually try to encourage people to, okay, last time you said you're going to notice if I'm going to try to notice this interesting thing that I can help this person with. Oh, now I want to notice something else. No, you're not. It's like, okay, well,
that gets boring.
Look at what you've got. That's where the narration and the role playing comes into effect. It's like, okay, so you're really good at research. Maybe you said, oh, I looked up something before I came and I just realized something. And so that helps out. Just have to think it through. And I think it gives them a chance to get their juices flowing when you do things like that.
Right. I've also used dramatic tasks. Like, for instance, there's this one adventure where the street wolves, a lot of times they end up on this yacht. And we had this long combat and they were losing very badly at a certain point because I had half the team were non-combatants that were like support roles, and then the other half of the team basically got knocked out. And so then I said, okay, in order to escape, let's do this as a dramatic task, because then it's like I don't want to measure squares for running away, like keep going into combat. And we want it to be a fun, how do you get away moment. If you fail this, you're not necessarily dead. Maybe you get captured. And then next session, we pick up from there.
Right.
But again, like it's ratcheting up that tension is like, okay, we want to escape. Let's do this in a dramatic way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's where you brought it in on the fly, right? So dramatic tasks do not have to be a set piece either, right? The adventure I was talking about, it is part of the set piece. It is the big finale. It's not a combat finale. It's a big dramatic task, but you could pull those in any time that it makes sense. It doesn't have to be a set piece or anything like that. So
yeah, I usually go, hey everyone, I'm probably going to do this as a dramatic task. Let me look up the rules again just to make sure I'm doing this right. And then flip, because I use paper book when I'm playing.
That's a chases for me, but dramatic tasks, not chases. I always have to look up chases. I have to study those before the game.
Yeah.
So keeping on that theme, so now let's talk about quick encounters versus full-on combat. When does there's some obvious places where I use quick encounters for random encounters. The classic, you're roaming around the dungeon and there's a random encounter. I hate playing out. 3 orcs found you as they're walking around the dungeon. I hate playing that out. It's a waste of time. I'd much rather do a quick encounter, show that there's danger, that these creatures are wandering and there's danger. And maybe the players get a bump and bruise too for hanging out too long and not moving. But where else do you find that kind of dichotomy and how it might work out for one or the other?
Well, my version of that would be, because again, if it's Street Wolves, some rando guy bumps into you, like he's being aggro, right? I don't want a full combat most of the time for that kind of thing. The players may want to throw fists, but it's not narratively important necessarily, but
Right.
It's just a random encounter on the street, or they get hassled by street thugs, something where I don't necessarily want to take it that far to like extreme violence, so they're just going to punch each other a little bit, something like that. It works out really well for essentially mooks that are hassling the stars of the show, and you just want to get rid of them, but like you want to give it like a little, like not just hand wave it, right? But there's something there that you can just get past it, because a lot of times I want to continue the story and make it go forward, but at the same time you might want a little more color to have like these rando jerks show up once in a while.
Yeah, and if you hand wave it completely, then you also don't have the potential consequences built into the action.
Yeah.
So if the players decide they are going to throw a fist, go off that, and you just hand wave, it's like, oh, you beat the guy up, and now we move on with the adventure, because quick encounter gives you a chance to have, it'll fall in the category of deadly, even though it's not really a deadly quick encounter, but they could get a bump and bruise. They could be knocked down a little bit. They could, it makes it more interesting. And they get to, again, role play. Like, how am I going to, what's my friends doing? What am I doing? And then I get one roll to kind of finish it all, which is like the opposite of the dramatic task, right? It's really one roll solves the problem or doesn't. And there's consequences depending on how you do.
Right. And yeah, it definitely is one of those kind of random things with, if they're more skilled, they're probably going to be more successful. But it's just one of those things that it leaves it more to chance of the interesting die roll helps determine the results versus just like yes-anding, improv type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll fight, and players a lot of times love rolling dice, and instead of hand waving it away, you give them that opportunity to keep their dice hand warm and keep rolling.
It plays into their agency, right? They made a decision, and so now we're going to see what happens. And I think I sometimes, and this is even in trait roles, sometimes I get in the habit of, for players, when they're competent for certain things. Like, I want to do X. Well, you're competent and you succeed. And sometimes they're like, thank God I didn't have to roll. Sometimes they get that little look on their face like, oh, I thought I was going to have to roll.
They're like, that's my thing. I wanted to roll for that because I'm good at that.
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely a line that you have to kind of consider is like, let them do their special thing. But, one other time I've used quick encounters is when I'm running out of time in a session, especially if it's like a one-shot or a test. It's like, okay, we do not have time for, like, even though combat in Savage Rolls is way faster than other systems, it still can get a little crunchy at times. And it's like, let's just do this final battle as a quick encounter and see how it goes.
Yeah, that's a classic, right? The combat is, it's just, you can do it in two ways when you're doing like convention games, right? You kind of, in the middle, you keep your timing and you go, well, here's this middle encounter and my timing is off. So maybe I'll just quick encounter that middle one so that we can get to the important battle. And then in the important battle, if you're running out of time, it's like, well, let's see what happened. Especially if the players have already taken out a lot of minions. It's like, okay, so you've really whittled these guys down. We don't have a lot of time. So let's see what happens with the big bad. You guys are finally facing them, and they might come out with wounds. It's never going to kill anybody at the end, because the worst you can get is 4 wounds, right? So the odds of dying are pretty minimal, but at least it's like you can, and then let the players narrate how that happened, right? So you got a wound. How did that happen when you were fighting? Oh, well, I was doing this and I was doing that, and I went to stab him, and he doubled back on me and hit me in the side. Oh, okay, cool, that's neat. And in the end, they win anyway, but at least they've got an interesting story to tell.
Yeah, and I was gonna say something else about that too. As far as you're saying, like in the middle of things too, that's kind of how I generally run my Street Wolves campaign now. Is I'll have a bunch of sessions that build up to a big combat. We don't tend to have a lot of combats, so we'll have like a lot of investigating, maybe a few quick encounters or whatever, and then we'll get to the big one. So like there can be a few shootouts that'll be the fast versions, as we build to this really big one. Generally, because I have some like I said, like half my players aren't the shooter type or the fighter type, so they're not really in it for battling. And then I do feel a little bad when we get to the big battle and they're just kind of like, they're doing support stuff and it's better than other systems, but they're just not as engaged as they otherwise probably would have been if they were trying to hack or sneak in.
But they had their moments in the sun getting up to that point, though, right?
Right.
Yep.
It's all about balancing what works well for everybody at the table.
So that's a classic one. Quick encounter for combat. There's obviously I think in Street Wolves this would work out well too. The whole quick encounters for things like heists and stuff like that. I'm sure there's a lot of I'm going to go get this information and it's pertinent to the story, but playing out that whole going off and infiltrating to get this information maybe is not the most important part of the story, and so you might quick encounter it.
If your team will splits and you don't want to spend all game night on that heist or whatever, right? Like you can get through that pretty quickly, so you're not just eating up half the table time where the other players decided to go speak to a suspect rather doing the heist part or whatever. They're not just sitting around waiting for like a long drawn out combat or something like that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the important part of quick encounters is they kind of streamline some things. And like I had players who decided they wanted an XYZ for their base, and it's like, I'm not going to write an adventure to go and infiltrate the military base so you can steal 50 caliber machine guns for your base. We're just going to quick encounter that, see what happens, and if you fail miserably, well, now you've got enemies, and now you've got the, they know who did it and stuff like that. So there's consequences, and didn't have to do that whole side quest that might have been fun.
Great.
Maybe we could have ran it, but it wasn't something that we really wanted to do in the broad kind of narrative of the campaign.
Yeah, that's a great use of them there.
Very cool. So how about so Street Wolves, probably this happens a lot, right? What about social conflict versus just a persuasion roll? Just a persuasion roll, and we talk a little bit. I roll my persuasion. It's opposed. It's great, but versus kind of that social conflict, which is multiple rounds, back and forth. There can be some support, stuff like that going on.
So I'll admit it, I really haven't used it outside of testing. Like in my ongoing games, mostly we do a lot of role play with some roles, but a lot of that is handled. And the other thing too is I have players that have invested in like the non-combat ones I keep talking about. Like a couple of them have invested heavily in like all the edges and stuff that make them smooth talkers and stuff. So a lot of times, like that's where they shine, right? And so I just kind of roll with it, where like I'll have them make a few of their rolls, but they're getting like +2 or plus whatever, and so they're doing really well a lot of times. So yeah, most of the time I haven't really used it. It's mostly just to like we just kind of play it out and just kind of feel it out sort of situation. So I must maybe I'll try it again.
well I find social conflicts are really good when there's some back and forth. It's when there's an opportunity for the person you're trying to persuade to kind of push back, and it's so like just recently in a campaign, the players were trying to convince they're part of the Vanguard, which is a kind of police force for the universe kind of thing, and they're trying to convince the high general of the Vanguard that he should take on this send them on this quest or get somebody to work with them so that they can go do something that they know is happening, and he doesn't believe them. And so we could have just done one persuasion roll and some talking, but it was much more fun to do that 3-round where they were like, here's what's going on, and let me explain to you. And he goes, oh no, I don't believe you, let me tell you what's really happening. And then they go, no, let me tell you what's going on, and let me show you some of my proof. No, I don't believe that, I believe this. And so they had that 3-round back and forth where the players were working together to try to push him to the point where he's not just an ally or just, I kind of believe you, but also completely, because there's levels, right? So he can become completely convinced and all in. He can be kind of, I'll give you kind of what you want, but I'm not totally in. And there's like that kind of effect, versus just a persuasion roll that might have a raise to it, and the raise goes, oh, he's like totally all over it. It was that back and forth, the role play. But the players who were face players, they were the ones really shining, while the other ones were bringing in support roles. And like one of them thought, like the hacker said, well, I've got proof. I'm going to pull in proof from my, I hacked the video cameras of the station we were on where we got the data. I don't remember, but I'm going to bring that. Oh, so you get a support role with your hacking. And that player who was the face brought that into his conversation, and he got his bonuses. Whether he really was talking well or not doesn't matter. It's, player versus character, but he had fun just kind of chatting it up and going back and forth with them. So I find that's the best time to use it, when there can be a little yin and yang going back and forth for a couple of and there's a chance for the guy to make his own point better than the players, and then they drop back a little bit. They don't get as they're losing tokens, as they're trying to move forward. So that's when I find it the best.
You've actually convinced me now. I need a scene with a character that needs to be convinced. That. So I'm totally gonna rip that off and
Well,
do the
I
same sort
can't
of
claim I
thing.
invented it because I think the example in the book is where they're trying to convince a king to go to war or something like that. So
Mm. I guess just reframing it for me is it works out better because there's no kings in Street Wolves. So, but now maybe it's somebody they need something from or whatever.
yeah, like well, so yeah, if they're working with big bosses or especially like they have to kind of sleek into some crime syndicate and see if they can pull some levers there. Yeah, there's all sorts of cool stuff you go back
Yeah,
and forth on.
yeah.
So very cool. Now, when we were going back and forth a little bit in email, you mentioned mass battles. So when when I use mass battles, they usually are huge, kind of end of the world. We're fighting it out. Like, I had a
Yeah.
campaign where there was like hundreds of ships. The players were on one ship. There was hundreds of ships going against 100 ships, and they were role playing their little piece of the battle. But the mass battle was what was determining the kind of the how the sides were coming. So tell me about how you use the mass battles and when it makes sense to use.
So, well, actually, and I wanted to bring it up because I wanted to hear how you used it and that sort of thing, and also to relate that I haven't really had a chance to use them because Street Wolves is a lot more street level. They're not really fighting these big, massive things, except in the Dead Hand campaign that Vince wrote. There is a mass battle at the end, and it's really cool. And it got me thinking of how I can like this one is really big. There's a Soviet kind of civil war happening at the end, essentially, and the Street Wolves get involved through like the CIA. It's very Tom Clancy type stuff, and so you're playing like the two sides in this war to control like this nuclear thing. Um, but that has inspired me to figure out some scenarios for my Street Wolves at home campaign where maybe they ally with a small guerrilla group. And it's not massive, but it's much larger than the 5 or 4 of them fighting against,
Yeah,
some mooks or something.
in one of my campaigns, to that point, there was a place where the players were trying to get back to like their main base or whatever, and there was a huge riot going on, and the police were going up against like the gangs. There was gangs going up against, and so we used the mass battle as a way of kind of abstracting out that there is these multiple forces at work. If the gang members got the police back on their heels, well, then that's not good for the players. So the players were using their mass battle skills to direct the police and say, hey, you should do this and you should do that. And so it wasn't like cosmic scale, but it's really nice when you want the players in control of larger sets of forces, like what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
There's a guerrilla unit that might have, or a platoon or something, and the players aren't moving the pieces on the board individually, and maybe you are having some combat when it makes sense, but otherwise it's sort of using mass battles as a way to abstract out these large forces going against each other and the players involved in that. Now you have to be careful because when the players get involved, there's rules around that. The players weigh into the fight, they roll some skills, they could get bumps and bruises, things could happen. But sometimes when I do mass battles, I use the players' input as ways of modifying the scenario. So the players are in and they say, hey, I'm going to train the troops because I'm a great fighter. And so I'm going to train. Okay, well, now maybe that's a +1 circumstances bonus as opposed to you actually weighing into the combat and doing something. And so I use that a lot where they can get bonuses or they can bring their skills to bear to help the rolls as opposed to the kind of traditional I'm rolling into the battle and I'm making a roll and it's changing things and I could get hurt or whatever and that sort of thing.
Well, and as I was testing the Dead Hand mass battles, I really liked the rules. It was just one of those things I really hadn't looked at because I'm always focused on like these 4 or 5 characters against, but I like your ideas of like the cops. Maybe there could be like a SWAT team the Street Wolves are associated with or something. But so now it does have me thinking as I write adventures and scenarios like, well, how can I build that group to be like larger squad or platoon size? So it's not a giant end of the world scenario, but it maybe the movie like The Raid or something, they're trying to take down like an apartment complex or something, right? Like where it's still small but involves a lot of other characters doing things in a bigger way.
Yeah, and most people don't take mass battles or take that as sort of their take battle as a skill. But if they do, it's great to have them an opportunity to kind of be the guy who's moving the playing pieces on the board, trying to put them in the right spot to be successful. So
yeah, I generally so I kind of encourage my players to take battle to give them hints on strategy and that sort of stuff. So they might not be really commanding soldiers, but that's an avenue for me to go, hey, maybe this would be a good ambush point if they succeed at that role.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like that kind of thing. So I do have a couple players that have taken battle just for that aspect. And then once they have that, potentially could unlock a mass battle where they're in charge.
Very cool. Very cool. And so then let's finish it up. Our talk about the quintessential. We talked about it. Rules looking up before you can run it. You have to look up the rules and study them. Chases versus, why don't we just run it as a dramatic task, or why don't we just do a simple skill roll on the piloting and call it good? How do those all work together in your mind?
So for me, I haven't done a ton of chases. Usually it's kind of this pre-set up scenario where, okay, the street wolves are going to give the option of stealing a car. So if they go on that path, then they'll have to go steal the car. And then once they've stolen it, then it's this chase scenario, right? Like I kind of plan it out that way.
Yep.
It's never something I just do spur of the moment, because even though I use Foundry VTT and I have like kind of a chase set up, it's something about the whole situation just makes me nervous, just like doing it as spur of the moment thing. I have to have thought about it ahead of time and read the rules like you talked about before. So generally I've also done it when I have a character or player who really likes motorcycle racing. And so then when sometimes we'll have a motorcycle race that's like a character spotlight moment where I just introduced her like not an enemy but a rival racer, and so I had those two racing with a chase sequence. But most of the time, if there's going to be some sort of chase, I'll just do it like you said, like a quick dramatic task or quick encounter or something that feels right for the situation. Or a simple roll.
I think a lot of people probably can do chases as like spur of the moment sort of thing, but I definitely find that I use chases are more of a set piece. It's like something, you're going in and things are going to happen, and when you're running away, like the Vanguard ship is flying away and the smugglers are after them. And that's just kind of part of the adventure, is that, it's going to be a chase, and it's kind of part of the set piece, is sort of the climactic part of this particular adventure, is trying to get away with the goods and being chased. But I don't know if I've ever done a chase like on the spur of the moment. Now, people in the comments talk about when you did like a cool chase that was just like spur of the moment. We were doing stuff, and suddenly we decided to do a chase, and we just rocked it right there and then. But it's always been kind of a set piece for me. And then if it's not as important enough to do a chase, then skill rolls or, quick encounter, usually dramatic tasks, not so much. If it feels like a chase, I run it as a chase. I don't use generally dramatic tasks then, even though I have to look up the rules. But
yeah. One time I ran a dramatic task that was sort of a chase. Was I was fiddling with this sci-fi setting that, who knows, maybe it'll come out someday. It's kind of backburnered. But the the characters were in this vehicle and they're trying to get to this town, and there's basically like a sandworm chasing them. So I ran it as a dramatic task for the sandworm coming up, and that they had to do something, you know, keep the vehicle moving, but at the same time trying different things to slow it down or stop it when it reached them. Just different stuff like that. And that
But
was
but that's really good point though. The chase wasn't the end all be all. It was all the things they
yeah.
were doing around the chase to kind of slow the creature down. So that is ideal for a dramatic tag. You are absolutely spot on, I think, with that.
Yeah, because I mean, you could probably do it as a chase, but I think actions and stuff would feel a little more limited because you'd want to do like, I don't know, the bumps and just moving the different pieces across the cards would feel a little weird. Like it felt more interactive and engaging with a dramatic task because those always feel a little more improv-y in a way because you're
They are.
kind of
Yeah.
basing the story on what the players decide to do. It's not like anything that's really set.
Yeah, and a chase really is a vehicle, but don't bump, for showcasing the person who's got the maneuvering skills that are useful. So if somebody's invested in like piloting and they're in a spaceship, that's their chance to shine as they're making those maneuvering rolls and things like that. So, but if that's not the focus of it, and it's more the drama around all the different skills coming together, and somebody needs to do this, and somebody needs to, on this station to do something, then yeah, dramatic task probably is more appropriate if that's not the important part of the showcase.
Yeah. But I feel though, probably just like any of these other things, the more you use it, the easier it becomes.
Oh yeah.
So maybe I should inject more chases because then I'll become used to them, and then maybe I'll be able to do them more spur of the moment rather than having to like
So,
put
so
it in
have
its
you
own little box.
have you thought about the chase deck? Like because if in Street Wolves, I imagine a lot of chases might be on foot through the city or being, something along those lines. The chase deck is really, I know it's kind of fantasy-ish. The pictures are and everything, but all the things that happen are kind of applicable to different settings.
Well, in Street Wolves, I have tables for chase complications. So basically, I watched every chase clip I could find online of like car chases, boat chases, and foot chases, and try to include them in those tables. But I haven't tried those cards at all. Like I'll roll on the table, if a complication comes up. But I think I could give those cards a try and see what they're like too.
It's kind of neat. It's more like a mini game within your game. It's like a mini card game within your session. I haven't had a chance to really use them because I play just online only, and I don't have that. There is a chase deck, an online chase deck. I can never get it to work in Foundry. I've never been able to get it to work, so I kind of gave up on it. But definitely for my convention games, I'm looking for an opportunity in my mind to pull out the chase deck and use it because it is a lot of fun to play with.
Yeah, I play online only too. So if you figure out how to get that deck to work, you let me know, and then maybe I can get it.
Well, you can buy it right from Pinnacle sells it, and I have a copy. I just cannot get it to work. Someone else, I think maybe I at some point installed a module for a plane deck that broke something. And so now that module's gone, but whatever damage it did is still there, and so the peg one doesn't seem to work with it anymore. You probably have more luck, but I haven't had luck. So
maybe I'll just give it a shot. I'll let you know if I can get it to work.
Yeah, there you go. You can tell me how to do it. So, all right, hey, awesome, great talk. Appreciate it. That was amazing. So again, tell everybody about what you're working on, where they can find it, how long it's going, price, whatever that makes sense.
So Heart of Glass is on Backerkit. I think it's up for 3 weeks. I didn't want to do a super long, these things are really stressful as it is. So I wanted a shorter campaign, and it's also smaller. The PDF will be $5, I believe, and then if you want it as a printed book, it'll be offset prints. It's not print on demand, so that will be $20. I do have a tier that has the audio log messages on a real cassette tape. So if we talked about not having cassette players, if you have a cassette player at home, you could get the tape and then play the little messages on the tape player for your players.
So,
And then in addition to that, I also have like the add-ons for the previous Street Wolves books at a discounted rate for I think all of them.
well, and this is a chance to get a hard copy of Street Wolves that if you've missed
Yeah.
out on before, right?
I sell it on my website, but that's pretty much in conventions, and right now that's pretty much the only places you can get it. So this Backerkit will have it at like a slight discount, so you can get it cheaper that way.
Oh,
too.
very cool. And I'll just say, you know, for those who don't know Street Wolves, it is a fantastic. What's the term? It's got a great vibe to it. It's just, you know, now maybe I'm a child of the '80s, so this is like all of my this is like my childhood, like right in front of me. So,
Well, I try to give enough detail on it if you didn't live through that era to be able to, you know, interact, because some of the technology is like a little bit ahead of where it was,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
not super, you know, ingrained of like you have to know exactly what was available in 1987. But you know, like I have pagers in the book and you know, explain like how computers and internet works and that sort of stuff. So I really wanted it to be accessible, even though most younger people probably won't ever buy it or play it. I just wanted to at least try to give them that chance.
well, I don't know. A lot of folks have picked up the kids on bikes things because that 80s nostalgia kind of hit them, even though they weren't around in the 80s. It's sort of like, oh, this is kind of an interesting era. So hey, you never know.
Well, they're talking about a new Miami Vice movie reboot that takes place in the 80s. So I'm hoping that's a huge success, and then people will find Street Wolves and then be into it from that. So, but that's
right.
a few years down the road.
Well, let's hope. Let's hope that just because a Miami Vice movie set in the 80s again would be fun. So
Yeah.
All right. Hey, thanks again, Paul. So great to have you on. It's always fun. Missed you at the conventions because I haven't gone this year. So we had a good time last Game Hole Con. That was a lot of fun. Missed this one, but maybe next year we'll pull it off. So yeah, thanks everybody. Check out the I keep saying Kickstarter. Check out the Backerkit. $5 for the PDF, $20 for the book, hardcover. The stuff that Paul puts together is really well thought out, well done, so you'll probably enjoy this adventure a lot. So pick up a copy. So once again, I'm Carl.
Thank you for bringing me onto the show again. I love it.
It's always fun. So next time we have another live stream celebration, I'll give you a ping again. So
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So once again, I'm Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff, and we appreciate everybody who watches, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye now.
It was one of the best games of the day. Savage World. Benny enhanced my play. Savage World. Different setting in a day.